Thank you. Hello, everybody. Very excited to be here. So before we dive in, I do want to give a couple disclaimers. I am a lawyer, if nothing else. So first, I'm a lawyer. I am not your lawyer. And what I'm going to do today is not giving you legal advice. My day job, I'm a lawyer for Mux. I give them lots of legal advice, but that involves really understanding the business. And so this will just be legal information. So you might think, okay, lawyer on stage, AI in the title. We're going to be talking about laws about AI. And as it turns out, no. As you look into a lot of the laws that are in the works about AI, they are not very baked. And if you're anything like me, you hate those kind of speculative, well, this might come true, this might get passed. So my hope is maybe I'll have something next year, but this year we're really going to focus on laws that already exist that I think can serve as good guardrails for a lot of the AI that's in development now. Before we switch to those, one kind of peek over the fence that I think is worthwhile is the EU AI Act, which some of you may have heard of. And if you remember from GDPR, you'll know the EU loves to regulate these meaty digital issues. So this is one they've been working on for a while, and they've been telling us it might be ready as soon as the end of this year or early next year. They've got a few drafts in flight right now. But even when it does come through, we'll have about probably 18 to 24 months to get ready as companies. So I would say don't feel like you need to frantically Google this one on your break. You've got some time. But a couple things that might be interesting to call out about what is in the drafts so far. It's got a number of high-level rules for riskier applications for AI, so making sure that those really critical sectors are covered. It's got a lot of transparency themes so far, so they're potentially considering having people disclose what categories of data their training models incorporate. And then it's got a number of kind of bans on certain uses of data for specific AI. But I would say the last point is probably the most important, which is even if you do go read the texts of these drafts so far, you'll notice they're quite vague. They're really planning to punt a lot of the technical implementation details to the agencies that will do the enforcement. So again, early days. And looking at the rest of the world, it is even earlier days. We got a lot of different countries that are currently working on something. In the US, we've got about 40 bills that have been put forth about AI. But knowing how great Congress is doing at getting things passed right now, I would not hold your breath. So I would just say an interesting space to keep an eye on. And I did include a bit.ly link for anybody who wants to wade in knee-deep. This is a report from the IAPP that goes into detail on kind of the comings and goings of these laws. So all right, I want to kick things off.
No way.
Go back for a second there. Kick things off with a little clip from a documentary that I think has some computer pros really diving into a crisis situation to get us all in the right headspace.
No way. I'm getting hacked.
Oh, port scan?
No, this is major. They've already burned through the NCIS public firewall.
Well, isolate the node and dump them on the other side of the router.
I'm trying. It's moving too fast.
Oh, this is not good.
All right, so if you are dying a little bit inside right now watching two people type on the same keyboard, that is about where I'm at as a lawyer watching people speculate about how laws might apply to AI. And I should say this is not even just, armchair internet commentators who have hot takes on hacker news. This goes all the way to the tech journalists who are covering the stuff for the New York Times. There's just a lot of confidence where I don't think it's necessarily warranted. So today I wanted to do a bit of a primer on a few areas of law that I think it's good to have a foundational understanding of just to do better issue spotting. So I will start with a big one, which is copyright. Probably you've seen it come up. And this is an area that was created back in the olden days when governments realized they wanted to incentivize people to create art. So it is a very wide thing. It covers all kinds of original creative works, everything from books to music to even choreographed dances. And a neat thing about copyright is that it applies the moment that you create something. So you can file later and get some extra benefits, but for instance, this very, artistic biscuit making video that I filmed years ago on my phone, the moment that I shot this video of my cat, I got the copyright to it. So what does that mean for me with my video? Well, it means that I get a few exclusive rights that I'm the only person who can do. So I'm the only one who can make copies of that video. I'm the only one who can sell them. I'm the only one who can play this video in public or show it to the public. And I am the only one who can make derivative works from it. So that's a little bit of legal jargon. Let's double click on that one. Derivative works is basically just legalese for remixes. And the idea here is only the original owner can do these kinds of new versions of their same art. So I'm the only one who can do this origami style video of my cat. And it applies to a whole host of things, from translating a book from one language to another, adapting a play into a movie. And there was a great case on this one years ago where somebody wrote a book of trivia about Seinfeld, and this sparked a lawsuit, and ultimately the court held that the book was sufficiently close to the original TV show that it was a derivative work of that show, and it was actually copyright infringement. So remixes, I think, are going to be very relevant, obviously, in the generative AI space, because it's very hard to control. You know, you've got this training data going into your model, and it's hard to tell what the AI will do, how much of it it'll kind of yoink into output. So something to be mindful of as we're working there. So, all right, that is what copyright does cover, a whole ton of creative stuff. But I think maybe more interesting is some stuff it doesn't cover. So the first is, it doesn't cover ideas. So keyboard cat video, it's an original work, it's kind of fully baked, copyright will cover it. But just the idea of a cat playing a keyboard is not going to be covered. So I get to make delightful things like this. And I will say this is something that is interesting in the generative AI space, because so often these models really do take a new approach to things. I tried desperately for this presentation to use various things, DALL-E, other things, to generate at least like an image that looked like Big Buck Bunny, and I could not for the life of me get one to output. It was just a lot of very cute bunnies chasing butterflies. So another one that copyright doesn't cover is facts. The idea here being that these are supposed to be original, creative works, not just stuff that has existed for a long time before you. So a classic case here involved a company that decided to put out a new phone book, and they were a little bit lazy about it, and so they stole the names and numbers from a competitor phone book and stuck them in theirs. Lawsuit happens, of course. And when the courts looked at it, they said, hey, those names, those numbers, that's all in alphabetical order, there's no copyright there. You're not going to get protection here. And they said maybe if you had organized these names in some kind of a creative little bucketing system, you could get protection on that sorting, but not for alphabetical names and numbers, sorry. So just an interesting one there. Another thing that copyright doesn't cover, kind of similarly, is functional works. So that is the realm of patent. Patent is for stuff that has this kind of utility. But copyright is not going to cover things like a basic for loop or the ingredients and measurements in a recipe. You can absolutely get a copyright on a full file full of code, or maybe the paragraph at the beginning of your recipe talking about how it came from your grandma, but not those smaller functional chunks. And similarly, copyright also does not cover names or short phrases. So it really just nothing that's super tiny. Trademark will come into play there, but copyright is looking to protect a whole work. So unfortunately, no matter how unique your function names are, if Copilot rips them off, you are not going to get help from copyright. And last but not least, copyright is only available if it was created by a human. So there's a great case that came out of this space where a nature photographer was out, put down his camera, and a monkey picked it up and took a selfie. And later there was a lawsuit over the use of that photo, and when the court looked at it, they said, there's no infringement here because there's no copyright here. The monkey took this photo himself, and since he's not a human, there's just nothing doing. And this is a unique one where we actually already have a bit of a clue how this will play out for AI. So in 2018, a gentleman contacted the Copyright Office to file for a copyright on this painting, which is called A Recent Entrance to Paradise. And it's supposed to simulate what a near-death experience or just before death would look like, dark. And the Copyright Office, he was honest about the fact that it was generated by a model, and the Copyright Office said, sorry, we can't give you a copyright on this because it wasn't a human who made it. He appealed twice, and they pushed back 2 times more, and eventually cited the monkey case and said, we can't help you. So quite likely that this will hold for a lot of AI, at least in the US. Okay, we have at this point talked about what copyright does cover, some stuff it doesn't cover. Last, I want to cover an area that's a bit of an edge case where copyright does apply, but you still don't need permission to go use something, and that's what's called fair use. So this is a pretty mushy thing judged on 4 factors. The first is the purpose of your new use. So is this marketing? Is it something more educational like the news? How much are you transforming the original to make your new thing? The second is the nature of that original work. So is it full of factual information and maybe more fair to borrow from, or is it super creative? The third is the amount that you're using. So looking at, are you taking a tiny snippet of the original or really copying the whole thing? And the last is the effect on the market for the original. So when you introduce your new thing, are sales of the original going to go way down? And what people get wrong, I think, the most often in the space of fair use is having any confidence about how it's going to turn out. This is a unique one where, unlike laws that have more clear wording, you've got this mushy test. And so until you have a lawsuit and it goes before a judge and that judge makes his ruling, you don't really have any idea whether something will be determined to be fair use. So just a tricky one to hang your hat on. All right, so we did copyright. Let's switch gears to trademark. Trademark's a bit of a different beast in that where copyright was trying to incentivize art, trademark is just about consumer trust. So if you've been buying Kellogg's Corn Flakes, you know you like them, they're crunchy, they're not poisoned, this is good. The government wants you to have confidence that the next time you go pick up a box of Kellogg's, you're gonna get that same safe product. And so they'll give the company a monopoly on using that name. This will apply to a lot of things that copyright's not willing to cover, so those words, logos, short phrases, things like that, even packaging. And it is one of the other distinctions with copyright. You need to get registration before you'll get any of those protections, so it doesn't just poof into existence right away. And another kind of distinction from copyright is how you show infringement. So because this is about consumer trust, consumer protection, the distinction here is whether what somebody's doing with your trademark would cause consumers to likely be confused. So let's say that maybe Phil Clough decides to start his own coffee shop, and he's a little bit lazy that day. He grabs a logo off the internet, swaps a Z to an S. Well, it might be fair to argue that these consumers who have not yet had their morning coffee could get confused over where their coffee is coming from. But now let's say Phil changes his branding up a little bit, makes it a little clearer, and he is just using plain text. Well, he may be able to argue that he's making a fair use of the other company's trademark. So you can do this where you're hitting 3 points. First, you wouldn't be able to identify that product without using that brand, so maybe you want to make a comparison. The second is you're going to use as little of it as you possibly need, so something like putting it in plain text. And the third is that you're not implying some kind of an endorsement by the other brand. All right, on to a third area, right of publicity. This is an older area, and so it's found in a bunch of different state laws. There's not a big federal one to rule them all. And the goal here is to give people the right to control how their identity is being used in commercial applications. So really just about commerce. It's not going to apply to news or commentary. And people often get tripped up on this one because it is an entirely separate beast from copyright. So you really have to think about both anytime you're making use of somebody.
For instance, when you pay to use an AI stock video website, like this one, you're getting a copyright license from them, but they've also gotten a release of publicity rights from me. So you can use my likeness for certain purposes.
So an interesting thing with the right of publicity is just how broad it is, and especially for one that folks don't often know about. It covers everything from somebody's name to their likeness to even their voice. There's a great case where Samsung made a Vanna White robot to do an ad about the future, and she was able to sue successfully because a blonde robot doing Wheel of Fortune was too much in her likeness. So as a kind of test case here, what if I maybe pick a local celebrity and decide to have a little bit of fun?
I don't know what RTMP is, and at this point, I'm afraid to ask.
Well, you know, in a non-commercial context, that might be quite all right. But if I were to switch up the script and make him start shilling for Phil's new coffee shop, then we might be in some hot water there. And this is another area that is already being tested in an AI world. So one of the stars of Slumdog Millionaire had a deep fake made and was able to sue successfully for that use of his right of publicity. And similarly, there is a former Big Brother contestant who has brought a class action for himself and a bunch of celebrities against a company called Reface that basically specializes in deep fakes. So an interesting one to watch, but again, I think there's a lot of clarity on how this might go. And last but not least, privacy laws. So raise your hand if you were involved in GDPR implementation back at your company. I am sorry for giving you flashbacks, I'll go quick. But you'll probably know GDPR and other privacy laws like it are really aimed at giving users more control over their data. So they want to help you disclose when you are disclose when you're collecting your data, let you delete it, things like that. So this is coming up a lot already with Clearview. And another fact is there's a lot of sentences already in these laws about automated decision making that I think folks don't realize. So this will come up in the hiring space as well. All right, so lots more. That's it that we had time to cover today. Lots more I didn't get to cover, including criminal law. But I will leave it at that. And so just ask that you help us lawyers issue Spot as you guys are working on this, and we'll promise to keep you posted on whatever the EU is up to. All right.